This is the Health and Wealth Radio Network.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation.
The lunch bag of Notre Dame will not be seen tonight, so that we may bring you this important program. Wrong again. That's better. It's the Health and Wealth Show with David Earnest from our super secret studios near a place where we always have a captive audience. It's the Health and Wealth Show, the 30-minute program that brings you some good news about your money. Now, here he is, the king of all currency. It's David Earnest.
And welcome back to another Health and Wealth Radio show. My name's David Earnest. We have Congressman Mo Brooks from the Tennessee Valley area. How you doing today, Congressman?
Doing great. Just working on my wife's to-do list. You know how that goes.
Yeah, I know those lists. I've had some of those myself. And you got to get them right. Or you might not be in good shape. You have to go back and do it all over again. Anyway, today we're going to be talking more about what happened Saturday, the assassination attempt of Donald Trump, and we'll talk more about how this could have happened. I mean, everyone knows about what's all over social media right now, what's been going on in the news. And of course, the liberal news was not telling it like it was to begin with. I don't know if you noticed that, Congressman, but they were not really making a big deal out of it. They're still trying not to make a big deal out of it because they don't really want the Republican race to be won. But it's sort of like they've got mud on their face, kind of. They don't know what to say. I heard they withdrew a bunch of negative ads immediately and things like that. But this thing about a gentleman, you know, Congressman, if you remember, we went to the Coleman rally back in 2021, was it?
Yes, August of 2021.
And there was a lot of security. Could you imagine someone coming through with a weapon on their back in a fatigue kind of uniform and them not noticing immediately that there was something odd about that person?
Well, there's a secured area and an unsecured area. You have between the two what's called the perimeter, and the Secret Service is directly responsible for what goes on inside the perimeter. And then local law enforcement is responsible for what goes on outside of the perimeter. And they're supposed to be coordinating with each other what the perimeter lines are and who's got what responsibility for what areas. And in direct answer to your question, no, I could not have imagined a shooter with a rifle, which is a highly visible weapon, getting within 130, 140 yards of the past president of the United States and candidate for the presidency of the United States. That is just outside of all realm of plausible possibilities. Yet it happened.
Yet it happened. And of course, I'm not one to want to feed on conspiracy theories, but they went crazy with this fact that this person got in. And also, I noticed that some members of the crowd, a lot of people in the crowd, were trying to tell the police that, or some kind of security person, that there was a man with a gun climbing a wall. And I don't know why that didn't stop him right there.
Well, there were so many flaws in the way in which this security was set up. First, let's kind of put it into a bigger picture. Apparently, the news has been breaking. There was a perceived threat by Iran.
Really?
The threat was a potential assassination of Donald Trump. And so as a consequence, purportedly, the Secret Service is saying that they beefed up their security in order to counter that attack. Now, with that kind of threat out there, over and above all of the domestic and other foreign threats that are out there. There is no way in the world that a 20-year-old young man with a rifle should have gotten within 130 or 140 yards of the President of the United States. None whatsoever. And it reveals a rather lackadaisical attitude that the Secret Service had in its protection plan for Donald J. Trump. They should be going above and beyond to protect a former president of the United States, particularly one who, at the time, was not yet the Republican nominee, but within a week he was going to be the Republican nominee for president of the United States, favored to win. And I personally believe that the lack of adequate security is consistent with the goal of the Democrats to win in November at any and all cost. I'm not saying that the Democrats that are in charge of all this had the specific intent to kill President Trump, but I do think they had the specific intent to not engage in the kinds of security measures that would have minimized the risk of a successful assassination of the former president of the United States. Again, keeping in mind that the shooter, intel up to this point is, the shooter couldn't hit the broad side of the barn with a rifle when he was trying out for the rifle or shooting team of their high school.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation.
Was a threat from another nation, Iran, they would have had people who could shoot and hit the middle of a quarter from 500 yards, perhaps 1,000 yards, not 100 and something yards. So what would the outcome have been if the Iranians, in fact, were trying to assassinate Donald Trump and, in fact, had used this same event as a place in which to do it? Donald Trump would have had no chance, given the very skim, faulty security measures that were put in place by the Secret Service.
Discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy.
Now, Congressman, you know I'm a financial guy, and you're an economist and a professional in several arenas. You're worked with the you're an attorney. You've worked with the DA. You've assisted DA and all these other things. You've got all experience. You're a congressman. You came close to being a senator, and hopefully you'll get there someday if people will listen to what they need to be listening to. But anyway, when you see all these things and you think about what really happened, people, their minds are just full of ideas about conspiracy this, conspiracy that, but some of it kind of makes sense. Like, could there been potentially a connection between this 20-year-old and some outside group that got in his head or hired him or encouraged him to do this? Do you think something like that's possible, or do you think this young man just did it out of his own?
Well, certainly at this point, most anything is possible because we have so little information with which to make an informed decision. I personally believe that it is unlikely. I don't know Crook's motivation for trying to assassinate the President of the United States. His mom purportedly was a Democrat. His father was purportedly a libertarian. Both of which do not like Donald Trump. Perhaps that created some internal animosity towards Donald Trump. The reporting is all over the place, so it's really hard to know what the true facts are. I'm cautiously optimistic that we will have a thorough vetting of all of this in a congressional hearing in the next month or two, conducted by the House of Representatives. If what was seen from Chuck Schumer is any indication, there won't be much of investigative hearings on this subject matter by the Senate, so long as the Democrats are in control.
Let me take a break here and just say you can contact me, Earnest Financial, David Earnest, at our new number. Our new number is toll free 833-596-SAFE. That's SAFE. That is 833-596-SAFE. And we do investments that are safe. We're asset preservationists. We use programs that cannot lose money in the stock market. And if you're interested in that, please give me a call and we would talk about that. Congressman, getting back to what happened and what the puzzles, the puzzlement that people have in their minds is, how did this gentleman was on a roof, and we heard some things, and of course you can't believe everything here in social media, but there's been some mention of this guy being in the scope, crosshairs, what do you even call it, of these weapons. The snipers were looking at him for anywhere from a minute to 3 minutes, and they did not shoot him. They knew he was there, supposedly, but they didn't shoot him until he started shooting. If some of these rumors are true and they had to wait to shoot before he was shooting, have you ever heard of such nonsense as that?
Well, as a matter of fact, yes, I have. And to a large degree, it is because of the policies of the Democrats, the litigation, lawsuit risk that various individuals now are subjected to, that cause them to hesitate and have 100% certainty when 99.9 would cause most people to act. So there is that concern that affects the rules of engagement that our sniper teams are forced to operate under. Now, I don't know the specific rules of engagement in this particular instance. Were they under orders to wait until a shot was fired, by way of example?
Mm-hmm.
Were they under orders to wait until a potential assassin actually had a gun out and was aiming it in the direction of the president? Were they under orders to wait until they had verbal approval to engage the assassin before or immediately after the first shot? So all of this will come out in the next few weeks, maybe a couple of months. And I'm very, very curious, like you, to find out what the rules of engagement were that these counter snipers were subjected to, because quite frankly, whatever they were, they failed. Now also keep in mind too, that you had some degree of warning to various people in law enforcement. At this point, we don't know everybody who received information about Thomas Crooks. He was identified as a suspicious character by various law enforcement individuals 20 to 30 minutes before the actual shooting took place. Now, quite frankly, at these kinds of rallies, both Republican and Democrats, there are a lot of unusual individuals who have various characteristics that are somewhat suspicious, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to separate the wheat from the chaff. And in this instance, he was identified as a suspicious individual or a person of concern, and law enforcement lost track of him somehow. But we had at least 20 to 30 minutes warning that there was a person of interest out there. At that point, the Secret Service could have been much more aggressive, ordered him to be cited and apprehended, questioned at a minimum, determined whether he had weapons or not. Then the next thing that we know for sure is that he was spotted by people in the crowd, not law enforcement necessarily, but people in the crowd.
Right.
About a minute, 2 minutes, maybe even 3, but at least 1 and maybe as much as 2 before the shootings occurred. And law enforcement was notified that there was a man with a gun who had scaled a building and was on a roof positioning himself to do what he eventually did. Now, the information is coming to law enforcement a little bit at a time, okay?
Right.
So first, man with a gun. Second might be that he's scaled and gotten the wall and gotten on top of the roof. Third might be that he's bear crawling to get in position. Fourth, somewhere in there might be he's got a gun with him, a rifle with him as he's doing these things. And then finally, he's positioning himself to draw a bead and a shot at the president, former president of the United States. So law enforcement is starting to react to this. But what is astonishing is apparently that didn't get to the Central Command. because the central command, with 30 seconds or 60 seconds at least of warning, could have very quickly notified the Secret Service agents who were around the president that a man had been sighted who was scaling or had already gotten on top of the roof, and they had a rifle, and they could have hauled Donald Trump off the stage before
Absolutely.
Thomas Crooks was positioned to start taking shots. Okay. You also had a local law enforcement officer who confronted him, but when the rifle was pointed at him, which is a natural reaction,
Yep.
that law enforcement officer dropped out of sight. But that does not explain why law enforcement officers did not run to one side of the roof or another, because, roofs slope downwards. So eventually you're going to have a sight at the man with the gun, and you're on the ground and you can start taking shots at him, and you can shoot at him a lot easier than he could shoot at you, because you can always duck down below the sight line, the roof line, where the shooter can't take a shot at you. Or the law enforcement officer, upon seeing Thomas Crooks on the roof, he could have done something real simple, like just pull out his gun and start blasting away at the ground.
He could just stick it up over the thing and just, I mean, well, I thought of the same thing, but we don't know.
If he shoots it up in the air with a large crowd nearby, that might cause hazard itself. But if he just starts popping off, shooting into the ground where other law enforcement officers can see him while he's pointing at the roof, then that gets the message a lot quicker, because the Secret Service in particular, they know what these guns sound like. Yeah. And they react first in protecting the president. Yeah. And then try to apprehend the shooter second. So there are all sorts of things that could have been done, but it was a quick failure from the very beginning of the allocation of responsibilities to the setting up of the perimeter that the Secret Service was for, to the failure to properly monitor the high ground, these roofs that were nearby. Right. Within an easy shooting range for a sniper, 130 to 150 yards is nothing for a trained sniper. You saw how quick our counter snipers were able to take him out once they were authorized.
Once they were
or whatever rules they were.
Triggers. Yep.
This is the Health and Wealth Radio Network.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation.
There, we've had assassinations in the past. Of course, John F. Kennedy was probably the last most spectacular, most recent one, which was probably, I guess, 1963. That puts it 60 something years ago.
We average about one a decade of either a president or a presidential candidate being shot. Right. With John F. Kennedy, then Robert F. Kennedy, then George Wallace, then Gerald Ford twice, then Ronald Reagan, and now Donald Trump. So it's not an uncommon occurrence, although for people who are relatively young and don't have the memory that you and I have, the experience that you and I have, we know that these things happen. In turn, the Secret Service knows that these things happen, and that's why they have to be completely diligent, and they have to have the proper perimeter, and it has to be secure, and it wasn't.
Well, what I was about to ask you, Congressman, is if you remember, I remember, and you and I are probably close to the same age. I remember when John F. Kennedy was shot. Now, I didn't understand everything because, I heard I was in grammar school. I remember the speakers reverberating, so loud I couldn't understand them. And I asked some teacher what's going on. They said, well, they killed the president.
I remember where I was too. Weatherly Elementary.
Horrible thing. Yes, we remember. But down through the years, I've read about the Warren Commission. I've read about this, the magic bullet. I've read about, all these different things. The guys that could have been in the drainage ditch, the people on the man that could be in the grassy knoll, and of course that the person who was accused was really someone that was just working with another organization. Potentially, Oswald Harvey, is he?
Well, if you believe Donald Trump and the National Enquirer, Ted Cruz's father was involved in all that. You remember the photograph that they were waving around in 2016, which turned out to be Photoshop by the Trump campaign?
Oh, wow. Well, anyway, what I'm saying is it makes you think, and of course, I understand that all of these conspiracy theories are just going to pop out everywhere. The biggest question is, in my mind, how did he get in there, and why didn't they do something faster? And people are saying it's a setup, it's an inside job, it's an inside job. And of course, we don't know what it was. We really don't know. It looks like it was just a crazy kid that, I call him a kid because he's 20 years old, but uh, this country is really in a mess. And some folks think that if he had killed Donald Trump, I have no way of knowing this for sure. Some people are fully convinced that there would have been some type of uprising amongst the citizens. Who knows? What do you think about that?
No, I don't think there would be an uprising because it would have been the Republicans who were the victim of the assassination, and Republicans believe in law and order.
That's a good answer. I really.
If it had been a Democrat, there'd have been riots all over the place.
If they had killed Biden.
You've not seen any kind of uprising anytime a Republican office holder has been assassinated. You didn't see it when Ronald Reagan was shot. You didn't see it when Gerald Ford was the subject of 2 assassination attempts. You didn't see it with Donald Trump. We believe in law and order. And unfortunately, too many people on the other side of the aisle don't.
Yeah, there was some speculation in the beginning that this young man was a member of Antifa, but I don't know if he was or wasn't. I kind of doubt it. But there was a lot of speculation because that fit in the wheelhouse. And maybe he was, maybe he is. I don't know, because they did burn some cities to the ground, so to speak, almost. And it's kind of scary to believe that something like that could have happened again over this episode. But as you said, I believe that makes sense. Most of the Republicans are more law-abiding citizens, so probably that would not have happened. And they make a big deal about this, the insurrection, which is not an insurrection of January the 6th. That was really just people being concerned. The headlines of some of these liberal newspapers did not seem to be excited about this. They, for example, some of them said, Donald Trump carried off stage due to some kind of a, event, whatever. I'm paraphrasing. Why do you think the liberal newspapers didn't make a big deal about this attempted assassination in the beginning, and still not making a big deal about it?
Well, if you look at history, typically when politicians are the subject of assassination attempts and they survive, their polling numbers go up, which means they're more likely to win elections. And to the extent the propaganda wings of the Democratic Party, that would be the New York Times, the Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and any number of other media of that sort. Then at the TV level, that'd be CBS, NBC, CNN, go down the list. I'm quite confident that they sought to minimize the impact of this as best they could in order to enhance the likelihood of the socialist, Marxist Democrats winning in November. That's my personal opinion, but I used to not think this way, but I've seen them tell so many false things that anybody with a brain the size of a pea or larger knew was false. But unfortunately, a lot of the masses out there, they apparently don't have the ability to think well or do research on their own, and they are often led astray by whatever the news media parrots out to them.
Amen to that. I mean, it's just totally obvious that we live in a different world than we grew up in. And I've heard that comment so many times by baby boomers, and younger folks can't remember the things that we remember because they weren't here. But no one would have dreamed that the news media would distort things. And Congressman.
Well, let's go back to when you and I were in our youth. Okay, we're talking about John F. Kennedy in the 1960s. you basically had three sources of information on TV: ABC, NBC, and CBS, and that was it. Okay. Then you had your major newspapers around the country. Then almost every community had their local newspaper. And because these entities were so powerful, they were held to high standards. And if they screwed up, they paid a price for screwing up. So they did everything they could to protect their reputations. So you and I, when we were growing up, we had a limited number of media outlets, and they tended to be more honest. They might have a little bit of a nudge one way or other on a story, but it wouldn't be huge and gaping like it is today. And it wouldn't be outright false, at least not intentionally outright false like it is today. So that's where you and I grew up. That continued into the 70s, although in the 70s, we started getting 70s or 80s, we started getting CNN and a few other sources. Talk radio picked up with Rush Limbaugh. In the 1980s, I think it was, when Rush started. And we started getting other alternative media sources of information, still, they were fairly reliable, and they were honest, and they were trustworthy. Then you had the advent of the internet, and you also have foreign actors who are intentionally trying to divide us as a nation, and who are intentionally spreading false information. And we've got a bunch of yahoos, particularly inexperienced people, younger people, who get on the internet, and they haven't figured out yet how to separate the real from the unreal. They haven't figured out how to figure out what is real that they can rely on and what is out there, but they ought to just think about for a while and question it before deciding whether it's real or false propaganda. And that's with foreign actors like China, like Russia, like Iran, like North Korea. Just go down the list, okay?
That's right.
And then internally, we've got a whole bunch of people who have absolutely no regard for the truth on both the conservative and the liberal side of the political spectrum. And that makes it a lot more difficult for people to discern what the true facts are. Generally, when you and I were growing up, there was a 24-hour news cycle. Reporters had 24 hours in which to get their stories right. Now it's like a 2-second news cycle. If you don't get your story out there in 2 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 minutes, you've already been scooped by somebody else. And because of that small time frame news cycle, mistakes are made. Gross mistakes are made.
Congressman, we're going to have to take a break. This is the end of the television show. And you said something a little earlier about how things have changed with the news media, and you can't believe everything. There's one thing you can believe. If you call Earnest Financial at 833, that's toll-free number, 833-596-SAFE. That's SAFE, 833-596-SAFE. We will make your investment safe against stock market drops and other things in the economy that could happen. But Congressman, thank you very much. We're going to take a break, and then we'll come back and continue this show as a radio show. Thank you very much for viewing, for our television viewers. Hope you have a wonderful day.